And that was my focus, that was my goal. Did I really want to go there in the beginning? No. No, I wanted to go to Marino. I wanted to be a missionary. Why? Because when the nuns came to talk to church on Mission Sunday, or whatever it was, I don't want them to tell me they prayed. I thought, well, how else would you get along? I presume you pray. I want to know what you eat, where you go, what do you do, how do you live. So if I went to a mission, can I make it or not? That's what I want to know. So I courted a couple of the Marinos that were Gary owned one day, because that's where I'm from, and said, I want to know the real story. What do you eat? Where do you go to the bathroom? Where do you teach? What do you teach in? What are you teaching? And that's when I really learned that I'd like to do that. I'd like to do that. Well, I went to my dad, I was 17. I wasn't 18. Wouldn't sign the papers. And Father Cassidy was the pastor, and he came over and he said, she needs to go to the missions, that's her call. And he said, get out before I help you out with my foot. And he was shortly behind him, so Cassidy was moving. So anyway, wouldn't do it, so I said to my brother Joe, who y'all know, my buddy, still buddy for life. Well, one didn't think up the other one did, so one and Jeff. So I said, Dad's not going to let me go to Marino, let's not go to Mercy's. They're Irish. So anyway, I sat and helped Camp pay the dowry, and he said, I have an idea, sell your 4-H cow. Because I joined the boys 4-H because I couldn't make enough money making aprons. So I raised beef cattle. So we sold the cow, he brought me to Mercy, and I joined the Mercies. Then I drove him crazy for 10 years till they let me go to the missions. Because that was my real call. Sometimes you gotta be like Moses on the run, you know? Until the Lord in the burning bush says, hey, I see something deeper in you than that. Now get out there and do your mission. So that's how it works. That's how it works. Sometimes you go 100 rigs around the track before you get to the real one. So when I left All Saints in 1970, went down to the Caribbean, because one of the driving forces for me going to school was, back in the days when I entered, you got sent out to teach, whether you knew what you were teaching or not. That wouldn't happen today. You wouldn't last 5 minutes. I got sent out to teach chemistry and physics, and I didn't know one darn thing about it. And I had a superior who was not the kindest lady in the world, and she said, I think about you, all you'll ever do is clean toilets and wash dishes. And I was so mad and so Irish, I said, to hell with you, I'll show you. So I started writing grants. And I wrote 18 of them, and I got 18 of them. So I finished my master's in physics and chemistry. What? It was good, I was trying to prove a point. And the kids learned chemistry and physics, they learned it well, as some of them did so well in school. Because I had to learn it the hard way. But in the process of all that, because we're human beings, I thought it was pretty cool. You know? And I thought, I can do this myself. Until much later I found out, you don't do it yourself. You do it with a neighbor, you do it with God. So I had to go through this process of being this kid who didn't know anything to this pompous ass up here, which is what it amounts to, so admit it, and get your feet on the ground, get a little humility and vulnerability, and go back to where your real call is, and teach it for the right reason, not for your selfless glory, but for God's. I'm blunt, aren't I? But that's how life works. That's how life works. So when I went down to the Caribbean, I was sent down there to set up a science program. Hated the place. Because I thought, I will make this work though, because the British were in control of the island. And so help me, I wouldn't let a British person, being as Irish as I am, control the Bahamians. So I said, then you're going to learn to run this explorer's club yourself. So this kid then learned how to dive, learned how to teach scuba diving, learned how to take them down under the water and weld the caissons and everything out of my physics and stuff. Taught them how to sail those boats and do their chemistry and their math on the sailboat, because it's what they needed to know how to do. So what happened then, Tom, you'll be disgraced. I was teaching them how to make the birth control pill. And I had my long habit on in those days, except when I was diving. And I got called in to this board at the plant there in Freeport. And I said to them, like this, when I walked in. And I said, just get calm. I may make it, but I don't take it. So I said, my kids have to learn how to know chemistry. You have to put the warning signs on every one of these bottles of pills. Or what it's going to do to these women and how it's going to affect their heart if they take it. I'm not packaging it. I'm just telling you they're going to learn the chemistry of how you put it together, but you have the moral responsibility for the warning on it. That's how it goes. So when they finished and they run the Explorers Club, and they were in control and stayed a year until they could manage it, and they're still running it. Then I went to the jungle. That's when I took off for Guyana. It's time to go to the hinterlands. That means the areas where they're not developed, and I was working with 12 different Indian tribes and the black people. And that time again, it's British Guyana. While I was there, it became Guyana. They gained their independence. So what happened then is anybody who had brains left the island, either went to Canada or went to Europe, and all the people who were staying were people who didn't have an education. So when I went there, I was told, you cannot mention the United States, you can't mention God, and you cannot mention capitalism, and if you do, you're shot. I said, I got it, but I'm going to wear what I'm wearing, and if you don't like it, I'm not coming. They needed a teacher. Was the problem. They didn't care what it was. They needed a teacher, so I told them, okay, this will be my turban, just like yours. So what you see is what you get. So I dressed this way, but I was wearing white because it was so hot down there. So I learned socialism, I learned the Native American skills, and what they had to teach. And I learned that wherever you go, all people want to do is be accepted for who they are and be respected. And be open enough to find out what their culture is, what's important to them, and that's how you teach. And I would say to them, I'll teach you something today if you teach me how to live in the jungle. If you don't teach me, I don't teach you. I have something to offer, you have something to offer back. I'd have never made it if they didn't teach me how to survive. So it gave them self-esteem, it gave them empowerment to work. And then when they got to where they could pass their GEDs or their forms, what happened was the government said, oh no, they're just dumb Indians, they didn't pass that. I said, then come on and find out, give the test yourself. I couldn't wait, because they had never been there. So they come in to these, we call them forms, you all call them classrooms, and they had to pass Shakespeare, because they were once under the British. So my sister Mary sends me all her stuff from her English classes, and I teach Shakespeare, which might have been midnight to them, you know, they care less. But they had to know it to pass. So the exam people came in, they gave them all their tests, they passed them. So then they couldn't deny it, they didn't know it. So then they said to me, where are your bathrooms? I said, pick a bush. That's what you offered me. Welcome. It's your school. Your socialism. Well, where do you eat? I said, they don't have food or water until they get back home at the end of the day, and that's when you choose to let us go home. Now you do the same. They never came back and questioned us again. The best lesson they ever got. This is what needed to happen. Because that's what it was like. But in the process of learning that socialism means is you can teach people to self-help. But the sad part of that self-help is, let's say the kids are raising cassava bread, and they're killing the lizards, and they're killing the boa constrictors, because that's pure muscle, that's good food. And they're selling it in the market. Government will say, you learn how to prepare it, you learn how to grow it, you learn how to sell it, but it's ours, you can't eat it. And they're starving. That's the hard part. You didn't pay us. We did. We brought a teacher here who taught you how to do it. But then they couldn't eat it. That's the hardest part of socialism, even today. The poorest people will suffer. Was our country nice? No. Because of the chemistry background, it made me so proud and fancy, you know? When I got down there to the palm oil, I could teach these little Indians how to quality control this palm oil with crude instruments and set up our own lab. Who comes in those days? Bobby McNamara, to see what we were doing. And he said, you know, you can't educate these people to control their own country. I said, why can't I? I'm down here to teach leaders. I'm not here forever. This was Friday. We've been back on Monday morning, and the lab was gone. Bombed right off the face of the earth, thanks to the Americans. We started from scratch. We started another quality control factory. So we're not angels overseas. We aren't angels over there today either. But those kids who learned are today teachers in that same village. We still keep in touch. Once a teacher, always a teacher. That's what happens. What I learned also in that mission was you have base communities. What did we call them here? Renew? I think we call them Renew. But base communities in the jungle meant we didn't see a priest for maybe once a year. There weren't any. What happened is you would have a group of maybe 20 people in a little area. That meant we went to confession to each other. Sorry, God, we didn't have any priests. We went to confession to each other, we prayed for each other, we starved together, we laughed together, we cried together. We did everything together. It was real community. When you come back here, man, nobody's going to be that real. Nobody's going to be that real here. If they were, I think we'd have our churches full. They had, as poor people, what we as rich people don't want to be that honest to become. We want to stay human beings instead of human becomings. Human beings are the status quo. Let me be comfortable. Human becomings are people who are evolving and moving and getting things done and changing. So what do you want to be doing? Sitting there on your throne or moving on and teaching the kids to do the same? Are you becoming or are you being? Nothing. Sorry. But that's something I think you have to think about. Here's a sample of a cultural experience. About 3 years into the work I was doing there in Guyana, the government official who was the educator, we call him today, I guess the superintendent of education, had a little stilt over here. He sat up in here in his house. He'd monitor us every day to be sure we didn't waste government time. Now I was kind of cute in those days and skinny. Good looking, if I have to say so myself, then. So he would come over and try to seduce me. When you're hungry, when you're tired, when you're thirsty, and I say, no, go back to your hut. I'm on government time, and I'm a good socialist. So I'm doing what you ask. And he'd leave. But he raped the 3 people in the other village. And I knew about it, but I couldn't tell. So if he could get me, he could scandalize all the river communities we worked in on the weekend. I thought, you won't get me. So he came back again 3 weeks later and he said, I suppose you'd die for these people, wouldn't you? I said, yeah, they're my people too. There's only one family. I'll see if you will. So there was a lady from Tobago, Dorothy Thompson. She was olive color. I was white as snow, as you know. And Gamehoff, who was my assistant superintendent, was black as the ace of spades. We were the 3 in the school. Gamehoff says, he's going to get you. I said, you better stick with me. I said to Dorothy, if you can do this with me, I can do it with you, because we're going to do it together. So they came in and marched all the kids out on the hillside. The kids just wore loincloths, because remember, it's the jungle. And they took Dorothy and I over here, and they stripped us. And they beat us with burned bamboo poles. And they thought we were dead. We weren't dead. We didn't know we weren't dead either. But we came to when the guy was gone, and the kids were crying their eyes out on how many hours they were standing there. And I said, you know, just go into the bush and get some aloe, you know what it is, and start rubbing it on these burns for the both of us. We did it for 3 months and we healed. But that guy came back again and said, listen, nun, I'm not afraid of you, but I'm not messing with your God. I thought, yes. I didn't have to say a word. It's witness that was the example, not what you say, but what you act like. You'll be asked to make those kind of sacrifices as missionaries. I'm not alone. All missionaries go through that. The other powerful lesson I learned there was, in the summers, I worked in the Mahaika leper colony. Because I always wanted to know what a leper looked like. And I always wanted to know what I would do if I were with a leper. And I had this concept from home. Remember, way back, it said, everybody's equal. So I thought one day, because I was a chaplain and a caregiver in the colony, and I said to this leper, what's this like? And I thought, you know, I'm treating the person underneath this rotten disease and this smell. I'm not treating the disease. That was the turning point. And then when I saw government people come through, and people would stand like this on display so people could see what the lepers look like, how crude is that? I went over one day to shake hands with this guy, and he said, I have an arm. I went to hug him, and his face dislocated. That's what happens with lepers. Would I do it again? You bet I would. Because that person had been hugged in 13 years. It's a human being I'm ministering with, not the disease. And he was not contagious at that point. So you learn to love the person. Despite the disease, besides cancer, whatever it is, it's the person you're dealing with, the person you're ministering with. So that taught me a couple things. One was to be real. One was to empty yourself and surrender to God so that you can be free to the people and offer the services they have and be open to what they can offer to you. They both grow together. The other example to me was a young man, he's about 32, Francis Romacendo, has his confirmation class. His daughter was in the school, excuse me, Father, but you're human too, I said to the girls who had their period, you stay in the school and break the sun. Because they didn't have anything to protect them like we have here, so you'd have menstrual fluid running down their legs with the insects and the heat and all the rest of it. So I said, the other ones will go out with me and we'll get our machetes and we'll cut the field. We had machetes also to kill the various snakes because they're deadly poisonous. And then we can switch around as with people with their period and out their period. Oh, where did this get down to the Stelling, the market? And in the market, word got around it that none from the other country is telling them they don't have to practice socialism. They don't all have to go out in the field. Some can stay in the school, and some can go in the field. They didn't tell the whole story. But the Guyanese government interpreted that, and I was scared to death when we get shot now. I thought, well, I get shot, I get shot. So we had the stelling. I would have youth club at 3:30 in the morning after we finished the stelling. They could come up and we'd have classes and singing and whatever, so I knew all the kids in that county. What happened was, they brought Francis Romacendo, who was the father of this girl, in front of all these kids, and asked him if he thought it was good for his daughter not to have to work in the field when she had her period, even though she was making the summer bread for the government to buy. And he said yes. The machine gunned him until he dropped. They brought him back to school the next day, put him on planks, and made every teacher and every child salute him. Salute the guy who killed him. And said, if you do anything similar to this again, you're the next one. This will happen to you. Who was Francis? A martyr to his faith. He would not deny he was Catholic. He would not deny that he was confirmed. And he would not deny that he was trying to protect his daughter. It was the first martyr I saw. Those are the hard parts of teaching, and the good parts of teaching as well. Same thing happened when I came back from the jungle. I went to Mississippi in the Delta to work with the blacks because I couldn't adjust to like St. Jude's. The culture was too different. And I said to my superior, I can't adjust to this fast when I came back. Got to do something. And she said, well, find it yourself. I said, I will. I have a person I grew up with in Bernard by the name of Carol. She's working in Mississippi. She said, come down and help me. Well, then I learned the Delta and the racism was going on in the Delta at that time. This is in the late 80s. And we went to Marks, Mississippi. You know, this is where the mule train was marched to Washington, that whole story for freedom for the blacks. And there were 3 Dominican sisters from Cincinnati over here in the corner. They were at the clinic. We were from the school. I worked in the black school. There was a white school on the other side of town with the railroads in the middle. We worked in boxcars with light bulbs hanging from the top. And the black kids in there with sweat pouring off of their bodies. That's how much they wanted to learn. I thought, we weren't learning that bad, I'll teach you. So I came home from, it was fish fry on a Friday night, and over came this big black lady, and she came over, another lesson for me, and said, I'm just a fruit inspector. And I said, what? She said, I'm going to be watching you ladies to see what you do. Now a scripture that says, by your fruit you shall know them made sense. She's the fruit inspector. So, we went back home. One of the black people who worked with me in the village, this was Immaculate Conception in Clarksdale, Mississippi, and I went back, I had the black kids in school. Jesse was in my 8th grade. While I was gone, the people from the white school on the other side of town decided to capture Jesse. And they had him wrapped in barbed wire and pulling him between the car and the street. So when I came into the town, the black kids said, she's a white lady from the north, let her come through. So they put down the chains and went through. And the choice was, you either take Jesse off the back of the bumper or run over me because I'm not moving. They took him off. They never came back to drag our kids behind the car again. That's where you have to stand for your faith. That did more than anything I could ever teach them in school. I could go anywhere and a black kid or a person would hurt me. I had nothing against them. But this is a human being and you're not doing this to him. Otherwise you run over me too. And they just got in the car, started it up, and they didn't move. They got back out and unhooked him from the bumper. That's mission work. Am I getting in my timeline? The boss is watching me. Okay. We'll skip Massachusetts. That's another jungle. They think they know more than those dumb farmers in Iowa. One day they said to me, you know anything about advanced directives? 1991. I said, yeah, we've been doing it in Wisconsin since 1974. What do you want to know?